Hi. So, in the previous lecture, I have clearly defined the details of artificial neural network. Now I am going to restart or continue the proper lecture on artificial neural network in a summarized way because this is a vast field of artificial intelligence. So I thought it would be better to summarize the some entire topic, which are mostly relevant for any kind of data scientists or those people who are involved in algorithm development. So artificial neural network, which is denoted by ANN. And when we are saying ANNs, that means artificial neural networks, utilize layered nodes to process data where each layer applies a unique data transformation. So the output of one layer becomes the input for the other or next layer, culminating in the final layer's output. And the same thing could be presented in the right side figure where you can see the input layer, hidden layer, that is middle layer, and output layer. Now, there are different types of neural networks. These four types are not the limited types or subtypes of artificial neural networks. If you update or rearrange the combinations of the neurons or artificial neurons or nodes in different ways, then these four types could be converted into different subtypes also. So, other than these FNN, CNN, MNN, and RNN, there could be possibly more subtypes depending on the your scientific brain applications. Now, in general, if you want to understand the neural network architecture types, it may look like this: single layer, multiple layer, and more complex layer, circular layer, many more subtypes. Now, these things could be summarized, but before you summarize, I am going to explain the details of artificial neural network so that it will be easy for anyone who is not even familiar with ANN. They can learn the artificial neural network in 30 minutes, 35 minutes in an easiest way. Now, the architecture of artificial neural network could look like as the summary of picture. Here it shows how it could work. For example, behavior, logical rules, training set generation, controller learning, then controller development, deployment, and environmental execution. Now, the objective behind learning of ANN are fundamentals of ANN, comparison between biological neuron and artificial neuron, basic models of ANNs, different types of connections of neural networks, learnings, and activation functions, which is mostly sigmoidal. So just remember the activation function as sigmoidal. Basic fundamental neurons model could also be explained here just to see. Now, what are the fundamental concepts? Neural networks are constructed and implemented to model the human brain or to mimic the human brain. It performs various tasks such as pattern matching, classification, optimization, approximation, vector quantization, and data clustering. These tasks are difficult for traditional computers, so you need to have the recent computer or system. ANN poses large number of processing elements which are called nodes or neurons, which operate in parallel. So neurons are connected with others by connecting links. That is, normally we say the connections, association links, or adjacency link or connectivities. Each link is associated with certain weights or values which are calculated by using some mathematical equations, and it contains information about the input signal. Each neuron has an internal state of its own, which is a function of inputs that neuron receives, that is activation level or threshold level. Now, an artificial neural network could look like this. And this node, each node could be represented by certain values. And then these values could be calculated in certain mathematical formula. For example, here you can see the input is equal to y, in equal to x1. That is first input here, x1 into the weight w1. Then again for the second node, it will be x2 into the weight of this connection, that is w2. Then there will be a function y equal to f of function of input y function. Here you can see this mathematical equation. Now, the neural network could be also a pure linear equation, which could be seen here, input, then m, then mx. So m into x and then the m multiplied by x here. Now, information could flow in nervous system in different way. If someone is more biologist, they can understand it in easier way how the information flows to the nervous system of a human brain. So here receptor, sensory organs, then it goes to brain. Here, motor organs, effectors, where the brain sends this information. Then external feedbacks, different feedbacks, internal feedbacks. These are the regular process of communication between human brain and the system. Now, a biological neural network could look like something how it could in terms of a structure we are talking, for example, dendrites, cell body, synapse, axons, and then these information could flow in this way. And if you have seen some of the brain mapping, it could look like this pulse up and down here. This is impulse. So this has certain values, M, V in terms of volt, and then the nerve impulse training starts here. So here how it receives the signal and how it executes the signal to the next level. Now, how what is a biological neuron? It has three parts: soma or cell body, then dendrites, axon. I'm not going in the details of this. So next it comes end of axon, splits into fine strands which connects to the other parts. Then each strand terminates into a bulb-like organ called synapse. Electrical impulses are passed between the synapse and dendrites. Synapses are of two types, inhibitory and excitatory. Then here it comes neuron fires when the total of the weights to receive impulses exceeds the threshold value during the latent summation period. After carrying a pulse, an axon fiber is in a state of complete non-excitability for a certain time called refractory period. Now, there are certain models, for example, for the neural network. This is one of the example. Here you can see these are the mathematical equation, and mostly in case of artificial neural network, we use 0 and 1 things, but some people could also use -1 depending on how and how diverse and how complicated or simplified model you want to build. Now, feature of this model, how it works: it allows binary, that is 0 and 1 states only. It operates under a discrete time assumption. Weights and the neurons thresholds are fixed in the model, and no interaction among the network neurons. It is just a primitive model. Now, general symbol of a neuron consisting of processing node and synaptic connections. So here you can see the nodes and the synaptic connections, and these are the mathematical functions. So what it is called multiplicative weights, that means xn into wn, x2 into w2, x1 into w1. Then neurons processing node is here, then outcome is here. So here where w is the weight of the vector defined as something like this, and x is the input vector, which could be defined like this. Now, neuron modeling for ANN would take place in this way is referred to activation function. So domain is set of activation values net. Now this is a scalar product of weight and input vector. So neuron as a processing node performs the operation of summation of its weighted input. Now what is activation function? Bipolar binary and unipolar binary are called as hard limiting activation functions used in discrete neuron model. Unipolar continuous and bipolar continuous are called soft limiting activation functions, are called sigmoidal characteristics. So this is what you need to remember, sigmoidal characteristics. Now, what is how the mathematical equation could look like? For activation functions for unipolar and bipolar, they could be seen here. You can see clearly how they look like. And they are quite simple mathematical formulas when you are going to use the computer codes. It is quite easy to code it for these mathematical equations. Now, common models of neurons could look like this. So this is binary perceptrons. This is continuous perceptrons. So the mathematical equation could slightly differ, but the overall goal would remain the same. For example, here you can see -1 to +1. While here you could see some kind of sigmoidal function because it is continuous perceptrons. Now, what is the difference between human brain and the normal computer brain, that is ANN? So a speed here for human brain is few millisecond, but in ANN nanosecond, and massive parallel processing exists. Size of and complexity is something 10 to the 11 neurons and 10 to the 15 interconnections. While in ANN, it will depend on the designer and the system which you are going to use. A storage capacity stores information, its interconnection, or in the synapse, no loss of memory. But here, continuous memory locations, loss of memory may happen sometimes. Tolerance has fault tolerance in case of human brain, while there is no fault tolerance, that is infinity, gets disrupted when interconnections are disconnected. So these are the potential differences between human brain and artificial neural network. What is the control mechanism? Complicated. It is quite complicated and it involves chemicals in biological neurons, while the artificial neural network is quite simpler. And now, what is the basic model of ANN? So there are three parts: interconnections, learning rules, activation functions. These three things you need to understand. What are the interconnections? What are the learning rules? And what could be the activation function? Then classifications based on interconnections. So first we are going to see the interconnections like feed forward, feedback, recurrent. These things we have discussed earlier also. Single layer, multiple layer. Then in recurrent also, single layer, multi-layer. Now, single layer feed forward network. Something it could look like this one. This is single layer feed forward network. Quite simple. Now, feed forward network, its output and input vectors are respectively here. Then weights, that is Wj, Ij, connects the ith neuron with jth input, and activation rule of ith neuron is something net I equals this. And this is so simple in writing the computer codes that even the layman can write the code for these mathematical equations. Then it comes here, Oj, that is output which you can see. So the function of these weighted matrix multiplied weighted matrix for all the neurons. And then you can go for some more examples. Then multi-layer feed forward network. So here you will see layers of nodes. So here input layer, then hidden layer. It could be even more than these layers. Then output layer, where you can see the output single or multiple also, depending on what you want to achieve. Do you want to achieve the outcome more than one, or only one. Now,